Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. First of all, brutal loss on Saturday. I feel bad for Arkansas fans. Again, I'm not trying to put myself in your shoes, and you don't need me to go through everything. Forget what has happened in the history of the program. Just in this calendar year, we got to get to 2026 if you're an Arkansas fan. But we all know what happened Saturday in the Grove. Listen, I think what got a little bit undershadowed in that game, because of the manner in which you lost, because of the manner and the fact that Ole Miss's backup played really well. I'll say this, by the way, Arkansas fans, I know you don't want to hear it. I think that backup is better than Austin Simmons. He came into the Kentucky game the week before. I like him more than Austin Simmons. So there's a chance he isn't bad, but it doesn't change the way that things ended. And it doesn't change the fact that it's a disappointing loss in an era under Sam Pittman that has kind of been filled by them, okay? And so I bring it up because, to me, Arkansas looked competitive as you know what on the field. By the way, thank you, producer Matt. You're right. Torres on the Hogs for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Torres on the Hogs. Okay, so you lose Saturday. Taylon Green is just unbelievable. It's not enough. But I think what was frustrating for Arkansas fans was what their AD said on Monday after the game. Okay, so a little bit of context here. Hunter Yurachek is the AD at Arkansas. Fundamentally, I've never met him, never conversated with him. I thought he kind of knew what he was doing, but we kind of have, I hate to be a jerk, but we kind of have an increasing track record that maybe he doesn't fully know what's going on. And to even backtrack before we get to what he said on Monday, I want to kind of explain something to the audience that probably doesn't follow Arkansas on a day-to-day basis. Sam Pittman, the head coach, has been very public basically about the fact that, yeah, our football team hasn't been very good the last couple of years. We went 6-6, 7-6 with a bowl game last year. But that the reason we haven't been good is because we have all these schools spending all this money on NIL. And Sam Pittman's very vocal, very public argument. This isn't like behind the scenes sources say, no. He said this in press conferences. He's like, get us to the rev share era. We'll be on an even playing field. And Arkansas football is a freaking rocket ship once we get to the rev share era. Okay. And so I think everybody knows the rev share era is when schools can directly pay athletes $20.5 million a year. And that's been the sentiment out of the Arkansas administration and out of the football building for the last couple of years. Rev share is the answer to everything. It's the magic elixir to everything. We're going to get it all figured out once we get to rev share. And so that's not factoring in that everybody has rev share. It's not factoring in a lot of other things. But the Arkansas AD on Monday was kind of asked, okay, you've talked about us getting to this rev share world. Where are we at? Like, are we ready to compete? Like, where should we be in the SEC? He was at the Little Rock Touchdown Club speaking to the audience there and was asked kind of, okay, like, where are we at as a program? Here is what he had to say.
Championship in men's basketball moving forward. We know we're set up to win a national championship in baseball moving forward, and I think we're set up in several other sports to win a national championship. Football, where we are right now, we're not set up to win a national championship. I'll just be brutally honest with that. But I think we're set up to compete really well in the Southeastern Conference, especially now with the new revenue sharing model.
And you feel that's directly related to directly related to finances. That's what you feel when you say that, correct?
Absolutely. It's directly related to finances and what programs were able to invest in their teams in the past.
So that was the Arkansas AD publicly acknowledging that, no, we are not in position to compete in football, to which I say, listen, Matt, we'll wait for the second piece of sound for half a second. Let me just say this. Before we get to the second piece of sound where he gives a little bit more context, I don't think you need any more context for me to say this. There are certainly certain schools that work from a disadvantage financially in the NIL world. We don't have to name them, but we know who some of the schools are that are spending a lot. I think it's inherently known Texas spends a lot on its program. Texas Tech and Texas A&M public records show they both spent $50+ million on student athletes last year. So I just bring it up. This isn't to pick on the Texas schools or anything like that. It's to say some schools are better positioned than others. There are certainly schools that frankly just don't have the money that others do. The one thing I will say is two things. I don't want to hear any AD in the SEC say that they are not positioned to win in football at the highest level. I'm sorry, but given the setup that everyone else in college sports has, there is not an excuse for any Big Ten AD, any SEC AD to publicly say that we cannot win at the highest level in football. Now, every school has inherent advantages, inherent disadvantages, but I'll tell you what, if you are in the Big Ten or the SEC, you are in, to use political terms, the ruling class, the elite, the whatever. There's no excuses. I was thinking about this before the show. You know how there's basically an old saying of if you're born in America, and I'm not trying to get political again, but I'm just saying, if you're born in America, you already have an advantage over 99% of the world outside of America. It's the truth. And if you disagree, you probably haven't been to any other countries, okay? But I bring it up because if you're born in America, you probably have 99% advantage over most of the world, okay? It's the same with the SEC. If you are an SEC football program or you are an SEC AD, I'm sorry, you have advantages over just about everybody else in college sports. So I don't want to hear it. I also don't want to hear it as it pertains to Arkansas, because I do think even in the SEC, there's a little bit of a caste system. There's certain schools that are certainly positioned better than others. We know that Texas is positioned probably best in the SEC. Texas A&M might be the only one that's even close. And we know that there's certain schools that are at a disadvantage. I think Mississippi State, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that they don't have the money of Texas. That's not a knock. It's just a reality. I see it in the chat. Kentucky, I think, there's a tough potential reckoning coming at Kentucky where they kind of have to figure out, can we be great in both basketball and football? And if we can't, do we just go all in on basketball and basically sacrifice the football program? We talked about that over the summer. I think even a place like Alabama, they don't have the money of a lot of different places, and it might be the opposite of Alabama. They might put all their resources into football, and it might come at the expense of Nate Oates and his program. And so I bring it up because I understand that there are places in the SEC that even by SEC standards don't match up. Arkansas is not one of those places. Arkansas ain't a poverty program. I have been to Fayetteville. It is a beautiful campus in a beautiful area of the state, and there is enough money to compete at the top of these sports, okay? The bottom line is, listen, we all know the names. We all know John Tyson. Tyson Chicken. Shout out Tyson. I have my Tyson t-shirt. Should have worn it right now. I have my Tyson windbreaker. Should have worn it right now. We know Tyson, JB Hunt, Walmart. There is plenty of commerce in that state. And I don't want to hear that you're some poverty program that, oh my goodness, feel bad for us. Nobody wants to hear that, Hunter Yurachek. And to take it a step further, nobody wants to hear it in this world. And nobody wants to hear your excuses as to why you're not competing. Now, to give it a little bit more context, Hunter Yurachek was later talking about the fact that really in this world of NIL, there are two, again, kind of, two different ways of looking at it. There's the way of, basically, there's guidelines from the NCAA, we're following them. And there's certainly other schools that basically go by the belief of hey, anything can be NIL. We could pay this defensive lineman $800,000 or whatever, and we'll figure it all out later. And so I just bring it up because certainly there is a divide in Hunter Yurachek's defense in how to go about NIL. Do we play by the loose rules the NCAA has given, or do we move forward and kind of just do whatever we want? Here was his response to that.
Schools that have decided to find a third lane, which I will call illegitimate NIL. And what we have right now in college athletics is we have a speed limit, but the signs haven't been posted on the interstate, and there's not a trooper that's patrolling. And so let's all raise our hands. If you're driving down I-40 and the speed limit's 55, but there's not going to be a trooper out that day, how many are going 65? Right? That's what's happening in college athletics right now. And so you have to decide as an athletic director, are you going to get out in this lane that you're not supposed to be in and operate without the highest level of integrity, or do you want to stay in these two lanes? And that's where the rub is coming right now in college athletics until we get our enforcement agency up and running. You're going to continue to have schools operating in that third lane, and that's a bad place to be, in my opinion. It's bad for college athletics. And I don't want to operate there, but I think to be competitive, we may have to figure out what that third lane looks like for the University of Arkansas.
Okay, so let me react to that really quick, because I've seen a lot from Arkansas fans of, screw the speed limit. We don't care what it is. If that school's doing whatever it takes to win, then we want to do that as well. Okay, there's certainly that argument. But let me even give a counterpoint to the counterpoint to the counterpoint. Forget whether you should be, quote unquote, playing by the rules or not, okay? Because I think even in college administrations, there has been a misunderstanding of what rev share is and what it's supposed to be. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what rev share even does, okay? What does rev share do? Rev share, this is an important distinction. It allows schools individually to spend up to $20 million, $20.5 million technically, of their own money to pay college athletes, okay? That does not mean that schools and that athletes at a certain school can only make $20.5 million. What does that mean? What is the difference? Arkansas itself, UConn itself, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, they can only individually, as schools, spend $20.5 million. But that doesn't mean that their their athletes can only make $20.5 million. What it means is that everything outside of the $20.5 million has to be, quote unquote, true NIL. Has to be something where, in theory, you're getting paid for a service. You're, posting on Instagram. You're showing up for a meet and greet. You're doing something. And so this notion that rev share is going to solve everything doesn't even make sense on that level, okay? Because first of all, guess what? If your argument for 2 years has been wait till we get to rev share, well, you know who else has access to $20.5 million to pay their athletes? Literally everybody in college sports. So that is not going to put you over the top, and saying it's only rev share is going to fix everything doesn't even make sense, because everyone has access to the same money. And what every administration's job is going forward, and by the way, it's not just Arkansas. I'll defend Hunter Yurachek on this, because I think there was a lot of miscommunication and misrepresentation. It's finding ways to create new revenue streams in addition to the $20.5 million that you can pay your athletes. Again, you're capped at Arkansas or Texas or Florida or UConn writing out individual checks. You're capped at $20.5 million. But it doesn't stop the local car dealership, the Tyson's Chicken, Friends of Cole in Kentucky. I just saw them advertised somewhere. That was why it was on my mind. Don Pepe's Pizza in New Haven, Connecticut for UConn. It doesn't stop. $20.5 million is just the flat baseline minimum of what can be spent on athletes. And so it's an administration's job to find other opportunities for athletes. Now, listen, sometimes you have an Arch Manning, a Cooper Flagg, an AJ DeBonsa, where they're so marketable, it doesn't matter. They're going to find their own deals. But what I believe the next iteration of college sports is the ability to help your athletes get other opportunities. This is what a collective should be doing right now. I saw a bunch of schools close down their collectives over the course of the last couple of months. I'm like, what are you doing? Collective is more important now than ever, because you have to create other opportunities for your athletes. So listen, I could go on and on, but one, I just don't ever want to hear an SEC AD say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have the money to compete. No excuses. Play like a champion. You're a leader. You're supposed to be leading. If there's a problem, you're supposed to be finding solutions, not just throwing your arms up. And by the way, if you can't find a solution, it's kind of like Billy Napier as a coach. If you can't find a solution, step aside, because somebody else can't. And it's the same with being an AD. If you can't figure out a way to continue to raise funds, continue to put your athletes in the best position, I don't want to hear it. But this notion that because we have rev share, we're supposed to stop at $20.5 million, that was never how this was intended. So I could go on and on. I'm already a little bit fired up, but we got a couple more things to get to. By the way, you want the unfiltered Arkansas coverage, Torres on Arkansas, Torres on the Hogs, Torres on the Hogs on Twitter. We also got our Big Pig Invasion shirts. There might be an invasion into the AD's office after that one, because it's like, You can't say that publicly. You just can't. And again, I'm not even an Arkansas fan, but it's like, it makes me mad. My AD said that. I'd be like, what are you doing? You can't say that publicly. What are you doing?